Her body slammed against the table with a crack that silenced the entire diner. Plates shattered, glasses flew, red wine stained the crisp white tablecloth like blood. And as Mr. Harding gripped her hair, as she felt the fabric of her uniform tear at the shoulder, as tears burned her eyes. No one moved. No one said a word. 50 people watching. 50 people in silence. But there was someone. Someone no one had noticed. At booth 17, in the darkest corner of the diner, a man in a black suit had just set down his fork. His eyes didn't blink, his expression didn't change, but his hand was already on his phone, and the call he made in that moment would change the lives of everyone in that diner, forever. If you've ever felt like you were invisible to the world, that no one sees you, that you could disappear, and no one would. Notice that this story is for you. To understand what happened that night, we need to go back 3 weeks into the day Emily walked into that diner for the first time. Not as a customer. Customers didn't have dark circles under their eyes from not sleeping for days. Customers didn't have nails bitten down to the quick from anxiety. Customers didn't clutch a crumpled resume with trembling hands. Emily was 24 years old. Brown hair pulled back in a messy bun that was already coming undone, worn-out shoes that she'd tried to polish the night before, and a desperation in her eyes that she tried to hide, but that anyone paying attention could see. The diner was called the Gilded Lily, one of those places where a single dish cost more than Emily made in a week. Crystal chandeliers hung. Overhead, imported linen tablecloths adorned each table. Waiters spoke in hushed tones as if they were in a church, the kind of place Emily would never have stepped foot in if it hadn't been for one very specific reason. Sophia, her 4-year-old daughter, one of the twins, the one who was born with a heart condition that the doctors said required surgery, the one who coughed every night while. Emily stayed awake, listening, praying, counting the quarters that weren't enough, the one who had 1 month to live if nothing was done. 1 month, 30 days, and $50,000 that Emily didn't have. She'd already tried everything, every diner in the city, every fast food joint, every coffee shop, every bar. The answer was always the same. We're not hiring. We don't hire single mothers. We don't accept people without references. No. Until someone mentioned the Gilded Lily. They said the manager hired quickly. They said he paid well. They said the tips were generous. What they didn't say was the reason why. What they didn't say was the price. Mr. Harding was behind the counter when Emily walked in. 45 years old, balding, small eyes that seemed to calculate the value of every person who passed by. A grey suit that cost more than Emily's rent for 3 months, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked her up and down, slowly, like someone evaluating a product on a shelf. "Do you have experience?" he asked. Emily lied. She said yes. She said she'd worked in diners before. She said what she needed to say. Because Sophia was at home with Lily, the other twin, and the clock wasn't stopping. It just kept counting down the days she had left. Mr. Harding smiled. That smile she would learn to fear. "Start tomorrow," he said. 6 p.m., black uniform, hair pulled back, no jewelry, no strong perfume, and no lateness. Emily almost cried with relief, almost thanked him on her knees. She didn't know that this moment of hope would be the beginning of her nightmare. The first day was a controlled disaster. Emily dropped a tray and mixed up orders, forgot the name of the wine a customer ordered. But she learned, quickly. Faster than anyone Mr. Harding had ever hired, and that irritated him. Because Mr. Harding didn't hire women for competence. On the second night, he cornered her in the hallway that led to the kitchen, the hallway where the cameras didn't reach, the hallway where other waitresses had been before her. "You're pretty," he said, getting too close. "With the right training, you could go far here. I can help you. I can increase your salary. I can give you the best shifts. All you need to do is be nice." Emily felt her stomach churn, felt his breath on her face, felt his hand on her arm, and felt something else. Something she hadn't felt since she found out about Sophia's illness. Anger. "I'm here to work," she said, pulling away. "That's all." Mr. Harding's smile vanished. His small eyes became even smaller, and Emily saw there, in that moment, the monster he really was. "You'll regret this," he whispered. "They all do." From that day on, Emily's life at the Gilded Lily became a carefully constructed hell. Mr. Harding never touched her again. He didn't need to. There were worse ways to destroy a person. He gave her the worst shifts, the most difficult customers, the most distant tables. Any mistake, no matter how small, was punished with shouting in front of everyone. Any success was ignored. She was the last to receive split tips, the first to be blamed when something went wrong. And Emily endured. She endured because every night, when she came home with aching feet and a heavy heart, Sophia and Lily ran to hug her. She endured because every quarter she earned went into an envelope hidden in her drawer. Anne. Envelope where she had written in blue pen, "Sophia, surgery." She endured because there were 19 days now. 19 days and $23,000 short. Is this story touching your heart? If you want more people to hear stories like this, Super Thanks helps this channel continue to exist. Each golden heart is a reminder that you are part of something bigger. In the third week, something happened that would change everything. It was a Wednesday. The diner was busier than usual. There was a special reservation for booth 17. Booth 17, the booth in the corner, the booth that sat in the shadows, the booth that all the waiters avoided because the customers who sat there rarely tipped and frequently complained about everything. Mr. Harding called Emily specifically to serve that booth. She knew it was a trap. She knew he was waiting for her to fail. She knew that any mistake would be amplified. Any problem would be her fault. Any complaint would be cause for more humiliation. But she went. The man at booth 17 was different from any customer Emily had ever served. It wasn't the clothes, although his black suit looked like it cost more than Mr. Harding's car. It wasn't the watch, although the discreet sparkle indicated that it probably cost more than Emily's apartment for a year. It wasn't even the presence, though he occupied the space as if the entire diner was too small to contain who he was. It was his eyes, dark eyes that seemed to see through things, through people, through the masks everyone wore. When Emily approached the table, he looked at her in a way no one ever had before. Not like Mr. Harding looked, sizing up her body. Not like the customers looked, seeing only the uniform. He looked at her as if he was seeing a person, a real person, with a story, with a life beyond this greasy spoon. "Good evening," Emily said, surprised at her own voice trembling. "My name is Emily, and I'll be your waitress tonight. Can I start you with something to drink?" The man didn't respond immediately. He glanced at the menu, then looked at her again. Then he glanced over at Mr. Harding, who was watching from a distance with his arms crossed. "Water," he said finally, still. And then, "Give me a moment." His voice was low, controlled. The kind of voice that didn't need to shout to be heard. The kind of voice that made people pay attention automatically. Emily brought the water, returned to ask if he was ready to order, returned again when he asked for more time, and each time she came back, he asked a question. "How long have you worked here?" 3 weeks, she replied. "Do you like it?" The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked if she liked it. No one had ever cared. "It's a job," she said, a response that wasn't really an answer. The man nodded, as if he understood everything she hadn't said. Mr. Harding appeared beside her suddenly, the fake smile plastered on his face, the honeyed voice he used with important customers. "Is everything all right here, sir? Is Emily taking good care of you? If there's any problem?" "Any problem at all. I can." The man raised his hand. A minimal gesture. But Mr. Harding stopped talking immediately, as if he'd been slapped. "She's perfect," the man said. "You can go." Emily had never seen Mr. Harding dismissed like that, never seen that expression on his face, a mixture of surprise and something that looked like fear. Mr. Harding backed away, but his eyes lingered on Emily, burning, promising. At the table, the man finally placed his order. Something simple, too simple for a place like the Gilded Lily. And when Emily brought the food, she noticed something. He wasn't really paying attention to the food. He was paying attention to the diner, to the staff, to how Mr. Harding treated people, to everything. She didn't know that he was there to evaluate the diner. She didn't know that he was thinking about buying it. She didn't know that he was Damien Voss, the Dragon King, one of the most powerful men in the country, a man who had built an empire from nothing, and who had one simple rule: never tolerate injustice against the vulnerable. She didn't know any of that. All she knew was that for the first time in 3 weeks, someone had treated her like a human being. At the end of the night, when she went to collect the bill, she found something along with the payment: a tip, $500, more than she made in a week, more than any tip she had ever received, and a note. For the envelope in your drawer, DV. Emily felt the world spin. How did he know? How could he know about the envelope? About Sophia? About anything? She looked back at table 17, but the man was already gone, disappeared into the shadows as if he'd never existed. That night, Emily came home and put the $500 in the envelope, counted everything. $23,500 now, $26,500 to go. And 17 days. She fell asleep with Sophia and Lily in her arms, dreaming of dark eyes that seemed to see right through her, unknowing that this mysterious man would return, unknowing that the next time she saw him, her world would be crumbling. But she didn't know what Mr. Harding was planning. She didn't know that the man at table 17 had been asking other employees questions about her, didn't know that Mr. Harding had found out, didn't know that his jealousy and rage had reached a boiling point. Mr. Harding smiled that night, alone in his office. It was the same smile he had before he destroyed someone. He'd done it before, with other waitresses who dared to refuse him, with other women who thought they were too good for him. He knew exactly how to break a person, how to make it look like it was their own fault, how to make sure no one would believe the victim, and he was going to do it again. The next day, Emily arrived at work and sensed something was wrong. The other staff were avoiding her. Whispers stopped when she walked by, and Mr. Harding was watching her with that smile, that predator's smile, waiting for the right moment. The man from table 17 returned that night. Same table, same black suit, same eyes that seemed to see everything. And this time, Mr. Harding was ready. Emily didn't want to serve table 17 again, not because the customer was difficult. On the contrary, he was the only customer who treated her like a person. But she had seen Mr. Harding's look when he found out about the tip, had seen the rage burning in those small eyes, and she was afraid of what that meant. But Mr. Harding insisted. Table 17 is yours, Amy said, the fake smile on his face, the voice too sweet, the tone that Emily had already learned to fear. And this time, try not to be so desperate. Customers don't like waitresses who look like they're begging. Emily swallowed the reply she wanted to give, swallowed the anger, swallowed the tears. She picked up her notepad and walked toward table 17, her heart pounding too hard. The man in the black suit looked up as she approached, and for a second, she swore she saw something change in his expression. Something like recognition, relief. "You came back," he said. It wasn't a question. "I work here," Emily replied, trying to sound professional, trying to hide the tremor in her hands. "I know," he said, "and that's why I came back." The sentence took her by surprise. What did he mean by that? Why would someone like him come back to a diner because of a waitress? She didn't understand. Not yet. What he didn't say was that he had spent the last 2 days investigating the Gilded Lily, talking to former employees, discovering the truth about Mr. Harding, discovering that that man had a history of harassment, that several waitresses had been forced to quit, that some had tried to report him but could never get proof. What he didn't say was that he originally wanted to buy the diner to expand his empire, but now he wanted to buy it for another reason, to destroy Mr. Harding, to deliver justice, to protect the sad-eyed waitress, who tucked away quarters in an envelope, labeled with a child's name. Damien Voss, the Dragon King, did not tolerate injustice. He never had. It was a rule he'd followed, since he had the power and to do something about it. But he'd also learned to be patient, to observe, to wait for the right moment, because rushed justice often failed, and he couldn't fail. Not this time. Sparkling water, Emily said, already knowing what he'd order, and a moment to decide. He almost smiled. Almost. You have a good memory. For customers who treat me well, I do. The words slipped out before she could stop them, and immediately, she regretted it. It was too intimate, too personal, the kind of thing that could be interpreted in ways she didn't intend. But the man just nodded, as if her answer had confirmed something he already suspected. The other customers don't treat you well? Emily hesitated. She glanced at Mr. Harding, who was watching from afar, with his arms crossed. Customers are customers, she said finally. Each one has their way. It was a non-answer. But his eyes said that he understood everything. She hadn't said. What would you have done? Tell me in the comments. What would you have done to one in her place? The night passed in a haze of orders, plates, and the constant gaze of Mr. Harding. Emily waited on table 17, then rushed to her other tables, then came back, and each time she returned. The man asked a question. The twins are doing well? Emily almost dropped her tray. How? How do you know about the twins? He pointed discreetly to the pocket of her apron, where a photo was peeking out. A photo of 2 4-year-old girls, identical, smiling at the camera, one of them with a toy stethoscope around her neck, the other holding a drawing of a house, with smoke coming out of the chimney. Emily felt her face burn, felt the tears threaten to return. They're my daughters, Sophia and Lily. Beautiful names, he said. Sophia, wisdom. Lily, light. Emily couldn't answer. No one had ever paid attention to their name. No one had ever asked about the meaning. One of them is sick, the man said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. How do you? The envelope, he explained. Sophia, surgery. You keep your tips in an envelope with that name on it. You count the quarters, as if each one was another day of life. You look at the diner calendar. Every time you pass, as if you're counting something. Emily felt the world spin, felt her legs weaken, felt like she was going to collapse right there. This man had seen everything, had noticed everything, had paid attention to details that no one else saw. 17 days, she whispered, and $26,000. He nodded, as if the information was normal, as if he was doing calculations in his head. 500 helped? It did, but it's not enough. No. The silence between them lasted only a few seconds, but in those seconds, something changed. Something invisible. A connection that neither of them expected. Which hospital, he asked. Emily said the name, didn't know why she was saying it, didn't know why she was trusting this stranger. But something about him made her believe that he could help. Something about him made her believe that the world wasn't just made of Mr. Hardings. And then everything fell apart. Mr. Harding appeared out of nowhere, his face red, his eyes flashing, his voice loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Emily, what do you think you're doing? The customers at table 12 have been waiting for 15 minutes. Are you just chatting while the diner is burning down? You were neglecting your responsibilities, as always." Like all the other incompetent waitresses who've worked here, Emily felt the humiliation like a hot wave, felt the eyes of all the customers, felt the shame rise up her neck, her cheeks. And then the photo fell. The photo of the twins. It slipped from her apron pocket and floated to the floor. Fell at Mr. Harding's feet. Who looked down? Who bent to pick it up? Who looked at the photo with an expression that Emily would never forget? "Ah," he said, his voice changing to something crueler. "The twins. I've heard about them. The sickly one and the other. Must be hard, huh? Raising 2 kids alone. No father, no money, no one." He held the photo in the air, between his thumb and forefinger, as if it were something dirty. "Give it back," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, please," Mr. Harding repeated, in a mocking tone. "Now it's please. But when I ask for something, right?" The man at table 17 hadn't moved. But his eyes were fixed on Mr. Harding. And something in that look made the air in the diner colder. Mr. Harding didn't notice. He was too busy, enjoying the power, enjoying the humiliation. "You know," he continued, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I try to help, try to give opportunities to people like you, but you never appreciate it. You're never grateful, always wanting more, without giving anything in return." "I work harder than anyone here," Emily said, her voice still trembling, but with something else now, something that felt like anger. "Work?" Mr. Harding laughed. "You call this work? Chatting with customers while the diner goes under?" He threw the photo at her. The photo hit Emily's chest and fell to the floor again, on the twins smiling, on the daughters who needed her. "Now get back to work," Mr. Harding said, "before I decide you're not even worth the minimum wage I pay you." Emily bent down to pick up the photo, her hands trembling, the tears finally escaping. And as she stood up, she saw the man at table 17. She saw his expression and understood that Mr. Harding had made a terrible mistake, because the man Mr. Harding had ignored, the man Mr. Harding thought was just another customer, the man who had observed everything in silence. That man was furious. But he didn't move. Not yet. Because Damien Voss knew that he needed more. Needed proof. Needed something irrefutable to destroy Mr. Harding completely. And he knew with the patience of a predator that Mr. Harding would give him exactly that. It was only a matter of time. The envelope fell out of her pocket that night when she was putting her things away in the locker, when she thought she was alone. The envelope with Sophia's name on it, with all the quarters she had saved. And someone found it. The next morning, Emily received a text message. An unknown number. A photo attached. The photo showed the envelope. Open. Empty. The message said, "This is just the beginning. You should have been nice. When you had the chance." Emily felt the world stop. Felt the air leave her lungs. Felt the $1,500 that had disappeared. 15 days of work. 15 nights of aching feet. 15 times swallowing humiliation just to bring pennies home. It was all gone. And Emily knew exactly who had done it. Mr. Harding was waiting for her when she arrived at the diner, the smug smile on his face, the victory gleaming in his eyes. "Trouble at home, Emily?" he asked, his voice dripping with false concern. "I heard someone lost their savings." Such a tragedy. Emily didn't answer. She didn't trust her own voice. She didn't trust what she would do if she opened her mouth. "You know," Mr. Harding continued, stepping closer, "these things can be avoided. Accidents happen to people who aren't protected, but people who have friends, people who are kind, those people stay safe." He touched her shoulder, a touch that felt like it burned through her uniform. "Think about it," he said. "You have daughters to take care of, Lily and Sophia. It would be a shame if something happened to them too." The threat was clear, crystal clear, and Emily felt the blood freeze in her veins. She worked that night on autopilot, serving tables, smiling for customers, dying inside. The $1,500 was gone. Time was running out. And now Mr. Harding was threatening her daughters. What could she do? Call the cops? With what proof? Mr. Harding was smart. He never left a trace. Never did anything that could be proven. She was alone, cornered, with no way out. Or so she thought. Because at booth 17, the man in the black suit was back. And this time, he wasn't just watching, he was planning. Damien had received a report that morning from his team of investigators. The report contained everything: Mr. Harding's history, the prior complaints, the hush money settlements, the women he had destroyed, and the latest, a transfer of $1,500 from an account belonging to the Gilded Lily to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Mr. Harding hadn't been careful enough this time. Maybe because he thought Emily was too insignificant for anyone to care. Maybe because he had never faced someone like Damien Voss. But the Dragon King had one rule. He didn't destroy people just with power. He destroyed them with justice, with proof, with the certainty that the destruction would be complete and irreversible. And for that, he needed Mr. Harding to do something in public, something that could be filmed, something that left no doubt. He just didn't expect it to be this brutal. That night, 10 minutes before the diner closed, Mr. Harding called Emily into his office. The door was open. The light was on. Several employees could see. "You're fired," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "What?" Emily felt the floor drop out from under her. "Why?" "Incompetence, negligence, inappropriate behavior with customers." "That's a lie. I never..." Mr. Harding smirked, that smirk she knew so well. "Unless, Ian," he said, lowering his voice, "you want to reconsider our earlier conversation. My offer still stands. Be nice to me, and I'll be nice to you. It's simple." Emily felt nausea rising in her throat. She felt the anger and despair fighting inside her. She felt like she was about to explode. "I'd rather die," she said. And it was the wrong thing to say. Mr. Harding's face changed. The mask fell. And what was visible was pure hatred, pure cruelty, pure rage from someone who had never been refused before. "You'll regret those words," and he hissed. "You'll beg to take them back." He grabbed her arm, squeezed it hard, and started dragging her out of the office. What are you doing?" "Showing everyone what happens to waitresses who don't know their place." He dragged her through the diner, past the customers who were still finishing their meals, past the other employees who watched in terrified silence, all the way to the center booth, the booth in the center of the room, the booth that was empty. And then he did the unthinkable. Mr. Harding threw her onto the table. The sound of Emily's body slamming against the wood echoed through the diner. Dishes shattered, glasses flew. She felt the impact in her bones, felt the fabric of her uniform tear. felt the pain and the humiliation and the fear all at the same time. He held her by her hair, yanked her head back, and shouted for the entire diner to hear. This is what happens. This is what happens to people who aren't grateful, who bite the hand that feeds, who think they're better than they really are. Emily couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but feel the pain in her scalp, the tears burning her eyes, the shame destroying every piece of her. 50 people in the diner, 50 people watching, 50 people in silence. No one moved, no one said anything, no one, except one. The sound of a chair scraping against the floor made Mr. Harding stop, made everyone stop, made the entire diner hold its breath. At booth 17, the man in the black suit had stood up. He walked slowly, each step echoing in the silence, each step charged with something that no one could name. It was power. It was fury. It was justice coming to collect an old debt. Emily was still on the table, still felt Mr. Harding's fingers in her hair, still felt the pain and the shame. But now, through the tears, she saw the man approaching, saw the expression on his face, and she felt fear. Not fear of him. Fear of what he was going to do. Mr. Harding felt it too. For the first time since he had started this scene, his confidence faltered. There was something about this man, something that told every cell in his body that he had made a mistake he couldn't undo. Who are you? Mr. Harding stammered. The man didn't answer. He stopped 2 yards away, his eyes fixed on Mr. Harding like a predator watching prey that doesn't even know it's about to die. I asked you who you are. Mr. Harding's voice rose, nervous, shrill. Nothing like the voice he used to humiliate waitresses. The man still didn't answer. Instead, he took his cell phone out of his pocket, dialed a number, and said just 3 words. Bring the cars. Mr. Harding released Emily's hair. She fell back onto the table, her breathing ragged, her body trembling. But her eyes didn't leave the man. The stranger, who had just done something she didn't understand. You can't do anything, Mr. Harding said, his voice shaking. This is my diner, my property. I can. Your property, the man repeated. The first time he had spoken, his voice cold as ice. Interesting. Mr. Harding opened his mouth to reply, but he was interrupted by a sound that no one expected. Engines. Many engines. Approaching from all directions. The diner's windows faced the main street, and through them, everyone could see. Black cars. Dozens of black cars, surrounding the diner like a silent army. 20 cars, or 30 cars, 40 cars. The patrons started to murmur. Some stood up. Some rushed to the windows. Everyone wanted to understand what was happening. And then, the car doors opened. Men in black suits. All identical. All with the same empty expression. All with the same look of someone following orders, without question. They formed a line in front of the diner, a human barrier that blocked all exits. Mr. Harding felt his legs give way. He felt the sweat trickling down his back. He felt like he'd woken a monster he didn't know existed. Who? What? You can't. I can't? The man repeated, his voice still calm, still controlled. Do you know who I am? Mr. Harding shook his head. No. He didn't know. Damien Voss, the man said. Some call me the Dragon King. The name hit Mr. Harding like a punch to the gut. Everyone knew that name. Everyone knew the story. The man who'd built an empire from nothing. The man who had more power than any politician. The man who, rumor had it, controlled half the city, in the shadows. And Mr. Harding had just thrown his favorite waitress into a table. Mr. Voss, Mr. Harding began, his voice trembling. I didn't know. I had no idea. It was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, Damien repeated. He took another step, then another, until he was face to face with Mr. Harding. You called her trash, stole the savings she was putting away to save her daughter, threatened her children, and just threw her into a table in front of 50 witnesses. That's a misunderstanding? Mr. Harding had no answer, no excuse. He had nothing. How much does this diner cost? Damien asked. The question took everyone by surprise, including Emily, who was still at the table, watching everything, as if it were a dream. What? How much? The diner, the property, the land, how much? Mr. Harding stammered a number, a high number, a number he thought no one would pay. Damien took out his phone again, dialed another number. Transfer twice that amount to the Gilded Lily's account, none now. He hung up, looked at Mr. Harding. I just bought your diner, which means you don't work here anymore. Mr. Harding tried to protest, tried to argue, tried to do something, anything. You don't understand, Damien interrupted, his voice finally showing the rage that had been contained. I'm not asking, I'm telling you, you're fired. And if you're not out of here in the next 60 seconds, my men will escort you out. In a way, you're not going to like. Mr. Harding looked at the men in black at the entrance, looked at the cars surrounding the diner, looked at Damien Voss, and understood that he'd lost. He ran for the back door, the only one that wasn't blocked. Ran like a coward, like what he'd always been, leaving behind years of cruelty, decades of abuse, a lifetime of making people suffer without consequences. But this time, there were consequences. Because Damien wasn't finished yet. When Mr. Harding disappeared through the door, Damien turned to Emily. She was still at the table, still trembling, still processing what had just happened. Can you stand up? His voice was different now, soft, careful, as if he was speaking to something fragile that could break at any moment. Emily tried. Her legs wouldn't obey. Her whole body seemed to have forgotten how to function. Damien approached, offered his hand, and when she took it, when she felt his fingers on hers, something changed. Something she could never explain. It was as if the world had finally decided that she deserved something good. He helped her up, helped her sit in a chair, helped her breathe. Some people pause the video here to process what they've seen. If this story is hitting you in a way you didn't expect, super thanks is a way to say that this type of content matters. Each support helps to tell more stories like this. The other employees were still standing. The customers were still in shock. No one knew what to do. No one knew what to say. Damien turned to them. The diner is closed for today. All meals are paid for. Employees stay. We need to talk. He waited for the customers to leave, waited for the doors to be closed, waited until only the employees remained, sitting in chairs scattered around the room, looking at him like he was an alien. How long has Mr. Harding worked here? 8 years, someone answered, a trembling voice, one of the older waiters. And in 8 years, how many of you have been harassed by him? Silence, a silence that said everything. Raise your hand, Damien said. I won't use this against you, but I need to know. One hand went up, then another, then 3 more, then more. In the end, almost all the women in the diner had their hands in the air. Emily felt the tears return. She wasn't alone. She'd never been alone. They'd all gone through the same hell, all been silenced by the same fear. It's over, Damien said, his voice firm, a promise, not hope. Starting tomorrow, this diner will reopen under new management. All salaries will be increased by 30%. All abuses will be investigated, and Mr. Harding will never set foot in here again. The employees began to murmur. Some were crying. Some were laughing with relief. Some still didn't believe it. Emily could only look at Damien, at this stranger, who had just turned her world upside down. "Why?" she asked, her voice still trembling. "Why did you do this?" Damien looked at her for a long moment, and in his eyes, she saw something she didn't expect. Pain. Old pain. Pain that he'd carried for a long time. "Because someone should have done this a long time ago," he said, "and because I can." It wasn't the complete answer. She knew. There was more. But it wasn't the time to ask. That night, Emily went home early for the first time in weeks. Damien had insisted, had offered a driver, had offered a car. She had refused. She needed to walk. She needed to process. Sophia and Lily were sleeping when she arrived. The neighbor who watched them had left a note. The girls had eaten dinner, had taken baths, had said their bedtime prayers. Emily sat on the bed between her two daughters, looked at Sophia, at the little girl who coughed every night, at the little girl who had a ticking time bomb in her chest, at the little girl she didn't know how to save, and she cried. Cried with relief, cried with fear, cried with hope, for the first time in a long time. But the nightmare wasn't over yet. The next morning, Emily woke to the shrill ring of her phone. An unknown number. She answered, hoping it was Damien, or the diner, or anything related to the night before. It wasn't. The voice on the other end was Mr. Harding's. "You thought this was going to end like that, huh?" he spat, his voice shaking with rage. "You thought you could humiliate me and get away with it? How did you get my number?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. Mr. Harding laughed, a laugh that sent ice through Emily's veins. "I have friends, Emily. Friends you don't know. Friends who can do things you can't even imagine. What do you want? What do I want?" He snarled. "I want you to suffer. I want you to feel what it's like to lose everything. I want you to beg me for forgiveness on your knees." Emily felt the fear return, the same fear from before. But now it was different. Now there was something else mixed in. Rage. "You can't do anything," she said, trying to sound brave. "The Dragon King." "The Dragon King isn't here now," Mr. Harding interrupted, his voice dripping with malice. "And your daughters won't be for long either." The line went dead. Emily felt the world stop. She raced to the twins' room. The beds were empty. No. She tore through the apartment, the bathroom, the kitchen, the backyard, screaming their names. Sophia, Lily, Sophia, Lily. Nothing. They were gone. Emily collapsed to her knees on the kitchen floor, the phone still clutched in her hand, the world crumbling around her. And then she saw it. A note on the table. A note that wasn't there before. A note with handwriting she recognized. "The twins' car seats are empty. This is just the beginning. Should have been kind when you had the chance. If you want to see them again, come to the warehouse at Pier 12. Alone. No cops. No precious Dragon King." Emily read the note 3 times, 4 times, 5. And then she did something she never imagined she'd do. She called Damien Voss. He answered on the first ring. "Emily, is everything all right?" His voice was concerned, genuinely concerned, as if he'd been up all night thinking about her. "My daughters," she said, the words escaping in sobs. "He took my daughters." "Who?" "Mr. Harding. He took Sophia and Lily. He said I have to come alone. He said if I call the police." "Where, by Pier 12? A warehouse. Stay where you are. Don't leave the apartment. Don't do anything. I'm on my way." "But he said to come alone. He said if I don't." "Emily," Damien's voice was firm now, unwavering. "I'm going to bring your daughters back, I promise. But you need to trust me." Can you do that? Emily wanted to scream, wanted to race to the pier, wanted to do something, anything. But his voice, the certainty in his voice, was like an anchor. Yes. Stay where you are. 20 minutes. The line went dead. Emily stayed. Each second lasting an eternity. Each minute feeling like an hour. She paced back and forth, looked out the window, checked her phone, prayed to any god who was listening. And then they arrived. Not 20 cars this time, 100. 100 black cars, 200 men in suits, all converging on one point, Pier 12. Emily watched from the window, watched Damien Voss's army move through the city, watched helicopters in the sky, watched the power of a man she barely knew be mobilized to save 2 4-year-old girls. And she understood something. She understood that the world was divided into 2 types of people: those who have power and use it to destroy, and those who have power and use it to protect. Mr. Harding was the first type. Damien was the second. In the warehouse at Pier 12, Mr. Harding was starting to realize he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. He'd planned everything, had hired 2 men to snatch the girls, had prepared the warehouse, had even rehearsed what he was going to say when Emily arrived. Begging. What he hadn't planned on was the invasion. The warehouse door exploded inward. Men in black poured in from all sides. Guns drawn, heard voices shouting. Absolute chaos. Mr. Harding tried to run, tried to hide behind the girls, tried to use them as a shield. But before he could do anything, a hand grabbed him by the throat. A hand that belonged to Damien Voss. "Where are they?" Damien demanded, his voice colder than Mr. Harding had ever heard. "Where are the twins?" In the back," Mr. Harding stammered, his eyes wide with terror. "In a room. They're fine. I wasn't going to hurt them. I just wanted—" "You just wanted," Damien repeated, the grip on his throat tightening. "You wanted to scare a mother, wanted to kidnap 2 4-year-old children, wanted to do this because a woman rejected your advances." He released Mr. Harding, who crumpled to the floor like a rag doll. "Find the girls," Damien ordered, his voice like ice. The men dispersed. And in less than a minute, the door to a room at the back of the warehouse was kicked in. Sophia and Lily were inside, huddled in the corner, hugging each other, crying softly. When they saw the men in black, they started to scream, started to shrink away in fear. And then Damien entered. He kneeled down, slowly, carefully, got down to their level. "Hello," he said, his voice soft, gentle, completely different from the voice he'd used with Mr. Harding. "You're Sophia and Lily, aren't you?" The girls stopped screaming, looked at him with wide eyes. "Mommy sent you?" Lily whispered. Damien felt something tighten in his chest, and something he hadn't felt in a long time. "Yes," he said. "Mommy asked me to come and get you. She's waiting at home. Do you want to go see her?" Sophia, the one who was closer, looked at him for a long moment, evaluating, deciding. "You're the man from the diner," she said. "The one who helped Mommy." Damien didn't know what to say, didn't know that Emily had told her daughters about him. "I am," he said finally. Sophia stood up, took 2 tiny steps, and held out her hand to him. "Okay then, you seem nice." And so, Damien Voss, the Dragon King, the most powerful man in the city, was LED out of the warehouse by a 4-year-old girl with a troubled heart. If you didn't feel anything watching that, you have no heart. Tell me in the comments which part of this story hit you hardest. In the car on the way back, the twins fell asleep in the back seat. Safe, saved, unaware of how close they'd come to real danger. Damien watched them in the rearview mirror, their identical faces, their brown hair, the innocence that had almost been destroyed, and he remembered another girl, another life, another story, a story he had never told anyone. In his coat pocket, there was a photograph. A photograph he had carried for 5 years. A photograph of a dark-eyed girl smiling at the camera. Unaware that she had only weeks to live, his daughter, Isabella, the girl he had failed to save. When they arrived at Emily's apartment, she was waiting right at the door. She practically ran to the car, even before it had fully stopped, yanked open the back door, and pulled her daughters into the tightest hug she had ever given. "Mommy," Lily complained, "you're squishing me. I'm sorry, my love. I'm so sorry. I thought that..." Emily couldn't finish the sentence. The tears came way before the words. Damien stood beside the car, watching, giving them space, letting the family reunite. But Emily wouldn't let him just stand there. She stood up, walked right over to him, and did something that took him completely by surprise. She hugged him. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest. "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." Damien didn't know what to do. It had been years since anyone had hugged him like that, years since he had even allowed it. But now, with this woman in his arms, with 2 little girls giggling in the car behind them, with the morning sun warming his face, he felt something. Hope. For the first time in 5 years. Later that day, when the twins were sleeping soundly again, when the apartment was finally quiet, Damien and Emily sat out on the fire escape, 2 strangers who had lived a lifetime in just a few days. He stared at the cityscape. She stared at him, trying to understand, trying to piece it all together. "Who was Isabella?" she finally asked. Damien froze. The question hit him hard. He hadn't mentioned that name, hadn't spoken about her at all. How could Emily possibly know? "You whispered the name," Emily explained. "When you were looking at the twins in the car, you said Isabella." Damien stayed silent for a long time, so long that Emily thought he wasn't going to answer, that she had crossed a line, that she had asked too much. But then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled something out. A photograph. A photo of a dark-eyed little girl, smiling at the camera. A little girl who looked to be about the same age as Sophia and Lily. "My daughter," Damien said, his voice cracking for the very first time since Emily had met him. "She died 5 years ago. Heart condition." Emily felt the air rush out of her lungs, felt the world spin, felt like she finally understood. "That's why you helped me," she whispered. "That's why you cared about Sophia." Damien nodded, his eyes still glued to the photo. "She was 4 years old when we found out. The doctors said she needed surgery, said it was urgent, said we had time." He paused, swallowed hard. "They lied. We didn't have time. I didn't have enough money back then. I was still building my empire, still fighting to survive. When I finally got the money, it was too late." Emily didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. She simply reached out and took his hand. "I promised myself," Damien continued, "that I would never let that happen again. That I would use my power to protect people who can't protect themselves. That I would be what I needed when Isabella was sick and I couldn't." He looked at Emily for the first time. "When I saw you in the diner, when I saw that envelope, when I saw a mother doing everything she could to save her daughter, I saw myself 5 years ago, powerless, without resources, without hope." Emily felt the tears streaming down her face, tears for him, for the daughter he had lost, for the pain that he carried in silence. "You couldn't have done more," she said. "I know," Damien replied. "But knowing doesn't take away the pain, doesn't take away the guilt, doesn't take away the dreams where she's alive and I wake up and she's not." They sat in silence for a while, 2 strangers united by a pain that only those who have lost or almost lost a child can truly understand. "I'm going to pay for Sophia's surgery," Damien said suddenly. Tomorrow. The best surgeon in the country. The best hospital. Everything she needs. Emily opened her mouth to protest, to say that she couldn't accept, that it was too much, that she would find another way. But Damien cut her off. Not as charity. For Isabella. Every child I save is a tribute to her. Every life I protect is a way to honor her memory. Let me do this. Please. And Emily understood that this wasn't about her. It wasn't about Sophia. It was about a man trying to find peace with the ghost of a daughter he couldn't save. She nodded. This story shouldn't exist. These things shouldn't happen. But they do. Every single day. And Super Thanks helps this channel keep telling these stories, to give a voice to those who don't have one, to show that love can come from the most unexpected places. In the days that followed, a lot changed. Mr. Harding was arrested. The security cameras in the diner had captured everything, the assault, the humiliation. The moment he threw Emily onto the table, the video leaked onto the internet and went viral. Millions of people watched a diner manager destroy a waitress in public, and then watched the Dragon King destroy him. The video of the black cars pulling up, the video of Damien buying the diner on the spot, the video of Mr. Harding running like a frightened rat. It was all seen. It was all shared. It all became a symbol of a justice that rarely happens in real life. Mr. Harding was charged with assault, with harassment, with fraud, with kidnapping, with dozens of crimes he had committed over 8 years, and that had finally come to light. Former employees came forward to testify. Evidence was presented. The case became national news. He got 15 years. 15 years in prison for a lifetime of cruelty. Meanwhile, Sophia had her surgery. The best surgeon in the country. Just like Damien had promised. The best hospital. The best of everything. Emily waited during the 6 hours of surgery. Damien waited right beside her, holding her hand when she needed it, giving her space when she needed it, being exactly what she needed without ever asking. When the surgeon came out of the operating room, when he said that the surgery had been a success, when he said that Sophia was going to live a long and healthy life, Emily fell into Damien's arms and wept. Wept for Sophia, wept for Lily, wept for herself, and, somehow, wept for Isabella too. A week later, the diner reopened, but not as the Gilded Lily. That name had died along with Mr. Harding's empire. Now it was called Second Chance, a name that Emily had suggested, a name that Damien had approved immediately. Second Chance, where no one is invisible. Emily was promoted to manager, not out of charity, because she was the best person for the job, because she knew every employee, because she understood what it meant to fight for every penny, because she knew what it was like to need a second chance. All the salaries were raised. All the harassment policies were rewritten. All the abuses of the past were investigated and compensated. The diner. It became a blueprint for what workplaces should be. And Damien? Damien was there almost every night, at booth 17, ordering sparkling water, watching Emily work, waiting for the right moment. Because there was something between them, something neither of them had named yet, something that had been born in the middle of chaos and pain and injustice, something that seemed impossible and inevitable, all at the same time. Sophia was the first to ask. "Mommy, is Uncle Damien your boyfriend?" Emily almost choked on her coffee. "What? No, he's a friend." Sophia gave her that look of a child who knows more than the adults want to admit. "He looks at you the same way the prince looks at Cinderella in the movie." Emily didn't know what to say, but the seed had been planted. 3 months later, on a regular Wednesday night, Damien arrived at the diner earlier than usual, sat at booth 17, ordered sparkling water, and waited. when Emily went to serve him. He didn't order food. "Sit here," he said, "for a minute." Emily glanced at the diner. It was packed. She had work to do. "Just a minute," Damien insisted. She sat down. "You know that I love you, right?" The phrase came without warning, without preparation, without any of the roundabout conversation she expected. Emily blinked. Once, twice, trying to process. "What?" "I love you," Damien repeated, his voice calm, certain, as if he was stating an obvious fact. "I've loved you since that first night when you brought me sparkling water. I've loved you since I saw you put quarters in an envelope with your daughter's name on it. I've loved you since you stood your ground when anyone else would have given up." Emily felt her heart race. She felt the world spin. She felt like she was dreaming wide awake. "Damien, I'm not asking for anything," he continued. "I'm not expecting anything. I'm just telling you the truth. Because I've spent 5 years of my life hiding what I feel, burying pain, avoiding connection. And when I met you, when I saw who you really are, I realized I don't want to live like that anymore." He took something out of his pocket, a small red box. Emily stopped breathing. "I know it's fast," Damien said. "I know it hasn't been long. I know you have 1,000 reasons to say no, but I also know that life is too short to wait for the perfect moment." He opened the box. A ring, simple, elegant, perfect. "Emily, will you give me a chance to make you happy for the rest of your life?" The entire diner had stopped. Everyone was looking, everyone was waiting, everyone was holding their breath. Emily looked at the ring. She looked at Damien. She looked at the man who had saved her daughters, who had saved her, who had shown her that there were still good people in the world. And she said the only word that mattered. "Yes." The diner exploded in applause, employees crying, customers cheering, Sophia and Lily running from somewhere, screaming, "Mommy's getting married! Mommy's getting married!" And in the middle of all that chaos, Damien put the ring on Emily's finger and kissed her for the first time. A kiss that tasted like promise, like the future, like a life that neither of them expected, but both of them deserved. You have 2 choices now: to forget this story and move on, or to accept that love can appear in the most unexpected moments, in the most unlikely places, in the most extraordinary ways. A year later, they got married. Sophia and Lily carried the rings. The ceremony was at the diner, at booth 17, where it all began. All the employees were invited. All the people that Mr. Harding had hurt over the years were there, all celebrating not only a wedding, but a victory. Proof that justice exists, that monsters can be defeated, that happy endings aren't just for fairy tales. Emily wore a white dress, simple, elegant, perfect for her. Around her neck, a necklace with 2 stones, one for Sophia, one for Lily. Damien wore the same black suit from that first night, the same watch, the same shoes, but with something different in his pocket. Not the photo of Isabella. The photo was still there. It always would be. But now there was another photo with it, a photo of 4 people. He, Emily, Sophia, Lily, a new family, built on the ruins of 2 old ones. When the priest asked if he took Emily to be his wife, Damien answered with the firm voice he always had, "I do." And when he asked if she took him to be her husband, Emily answered, looking into his eyes, "Since booth 17. And everyone laughed, and everyone cried, and everyone understood. Because some stories start with tragedy, start with pain, start with a body hitting a booth and the sound of 50 people falling silent. But the best stories don't end there. The best stories end with a yes, with a kiss, with a family, with a diner called Second Chance, where a sign on the door says something that Emily wrote on opening day. Here, no one is invisible. And she looked at the now full diner, at the occupied booths, at the smiling employees, at Damien serving water to Sophia and Lily, who had insisted on having dinner there that night, and she remembered. She remembered that first night, when she walked through the door with a crumpled resume and fear in her eyes, when she thought the world was only made of Mr. Hardings, when she thought she was alone. She wasn't. She never had been. And now, looking at her family, at her life, at everything she had achieved, she finally understood. Sometimes the universe knocks us down, throws us onto a booth, rips our uniform, pulls our hair, makes everyone watch while we're humiliated. But sometimes, just sometimes, there's someone at booth 17, someone who is watching, someone who won't stay silent, someone who will stand up and change everything. Emily smiled, the first time she'd smiled like that in as long as she could remember, because she had found that someone, and he had found her, and together, they had proven that even the worst beginnings can have the best endings. Do you remember the sound of her body hitting the booth, the silence of the diner, the pain in her eyes? Now look at her. Look at where she is. Look at who she has become, and understand that every story can change, including yours.